We're going to go ahead and get started. So here's a little bit of our agenda tonight. I want to start just really by discussing the impact of literacy. Um, I think sometimes we underestimate how important literacy truly is in shaping a student's really their life. So I just want to kind of share some words of wisdom when it comes to supporting literacy. We are going to discuss literacy kits, and if you are a veteran ASP volunteer, you may have heard that term before. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about some changes regarding literacy kits, and then also how to use them. There's kind of going to be some new organization surrounding literacy kits. And then we're going to do a bit of a phonics crash course. I know that many adults forget what it's like to be a new reader. Many of us forget how we even learned to read. So I think it's important for a volunteer to kind of think about the process of helping a student with a word if they're facing a word in reading. So that is our agenda. But here's a little bit about me because I am fairly new to AHC. So my title is I am the literacy specialist for AHC and resident services education. I joined the amazing education team in June, and I am so happy, thrilled, and honored to be a part of this amazing team. I come from a background in education. I really have been education minded, but I've always had a passion for literacy. I was a teacher for 10 years. I started in pre-K and then I kind of did a little in kindergarten, a little first, a little in second, which gives me a really unique view into kind of the process of learning to read and being able to kind of identify where students are struggling and really kind of hone in on those skills. I am from Baltimore County, so of course I'm a lifelong Ravens fan, and I'm also a lover of music. I'm huge into music. You'll often find me singing, and thankfully my students always would hype me up saying that I'm a good singer, but I promise I'm not at all. But that's just a little about me. I always tell, teachers I support, I think it's important to know who you're working with. So this is just a little snippet about me before we get started. So I think a big question is why literacy? There are a lot of really important subjects for students to learn in school and to focus on in an after-school program. So I really wanted to start here with why is literacy our focus? And I was hoping, would there be any brave volunteer that would like to come unmute and read this quote for us? Any brave volunteers? I know it's late and it's dark. It feels like nighttime.
I can go ahead and do it.
Thank you.
There is a strong positive relationship between childhood literacy and health outcomes in adulthood. According to Linda Mays, MD, chair, and Arnold Gesell, professor of child psychiatry in the Yale Child Studies Center. Mays pointed out that it is known in the scientific community that reading and having a rich literary world can help manage one's stress, uncertainties, daily life, and emotions.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that because I think you'll tired of hearing my voice tonight. So I appreciate other voices. Um, this quote to me really stood out because I think we think about literacy as, of course, being a valuable skill to have mastered, for children as we read in every aspect of our life, from reading a street sign to reading a menu. Really, truly, we read every day, and we don't always even consider those things reading, but they are. But it goes bigger than that. It goes larger than that, and there is a wealth of academic research and now becoming more health research to show that literacy rich environments and where students are finding success in literacy truly does impact their health outcomes. And so I think this was a great quote to illuminate that the work that you are doing in supporting our students here at ASP is truly benefiting their life in outside of just an academic standpoint. So I think that that's a great way to start remembering that the work that we're all doing here truly goes beyond what we think. Okay. So literacy kits. Like I said, if you have been an ASB volunteer in the past, you may have heard this term before. But if you're not, I figured it was a good time to really just kind of talk about what are they, and then talk about how they may change. So what are they? These are assortment of literacy-based games and activities that I have either made or found that is helping to students to build the literacy skills, decoding, phonics, vocabulary, etc. Because we know our students have been in school all day, we don't want them to feel like they're having, 2.5 hours more of school. We want our students to come to program. We want them to, practice these skills without feeling like it's another 2 hours of school. So I really worked hard to make them engaging and fun, but then they're also practicing and sometimes they forget, and that's the best part. The organization of the literacy kits is changing a little bit, and I'll explain why. So they are still going to be organized by grade level, but they're going to be more specifically tailored to literacy skills that are happening at that level. So the example I gave was it may be a third grade student that you're working with at ASP, but according to the assessments that we give at ASP, and we also talk to a lot of teachers at our students' school, they may be reading and their phonics knowledge may be more at a second grade level. So in the past, they would have pulled from a third grade literacy kit, which would have been skills that they've not yet mastered or frustrated them, which is the opposite of what we want. So if you have a third grade student and they're reading at more of a second grade level in their skills, they'd pull from a second grade literacy kit. And we're going to get into all of that throughout the slide. So don't worry if you're like, but how do I know? Don't worry, I got you. And then really just to again say, why is this changing? And again, they were organized by grade level, but it as I reflected and talked to our staff at ASP, I found that this didn't work for a lot of our students because many of our students are not yet reading at grade level. So this kind of disconnect with the literacy kits could have and did cause embarrassment, resentment, and sometimes refusal to even participate. So I'm hoping that this newer layout is a little more discreet, just to protect student integrity. I don't want them to feel embarrassed. I don't want there to be any negative impacts in practicing their skills. So I'm hoping that this will be a little more discreet. Students catch on; they're really smart. They begin to catch on. But I do hope that this will be a little more discreet for our students. So this is an example of what a literacy kit looks like. And I feel like you can tell from all of my arrows and circles, definitely teacher vibes over here. So each kit will have a colored dot in the top right corner. This dot corresponds to a grade level phonics knowledge. So for example, I just know that blue is first grade. So this would be a kit that you would work on with a student whose skills are showing at about a first grade level. But again, that doesn't mean that it could be a first grader. It could be a second grader who is about a grade level behind. So I just want, volunteers to get kind of in this, get it kind of finalized in their brain that the kits they are organized by grade level, but just not it's not always matching up if our students are not yet reading proficiently at their grade level. So on the back, I know, a lot of our volunteers, I wanted to make it as easy as possible for a volunteer to pick up a literacy kit and really have all of the information that they need to successfully practice with a student or a group. So on the back of the game boards or, whatever's in the kit, there are detailed directions. So it'll have players, what materials are needed. Sometimes you may need to grab like a dry erase marker or a dice, and those materials would be available to you. And then directions. I will say many of them, if you are in the kits enough, a lot of them have a similar layout, taking turns, reading a word, going through a game board. Again, I wanted it to feel, just a little more fun and engaging, to keep our especially youngest learners engaged. Sometimes it could be multiple game boards. So you and the student or the group would choose one of the game boards in the kit and be able to maybe play multiple rounds on different game boards. They'd be kind of put together like this, maybe in a binder ring. But again, and this is actually a good example as well. You can see on the top of that one, there are directions. Please make sure that you are following the directions on the front like this, because sometimes the directions either don't fit the needs of what we're looking for or ask them to do different things. So I would always kind of go with the directions that are on the front versus any that are printed on the actual game board. So this is kind of a layout on what it would look like for you to be using the literacy kits in a site. I do want to say that all of our sites run in a similar way, but not identical. Every site has different needs, different teacher styles. So this is kind of a gist, but please know that the staff at every site may do it the way that works for what they need to do. So this is really just kind of a general, what would it look like? You may be working with a student or a group of students, and they may decide that that student's the best way to use their time would be to use a literacy kit. So this is where it could get a little different. The staff would ask you to pull a kit from a certain color dot. For example, like in the one I illustrated, a third grade student who's reading at a second grade level, they'd pull a second grade literacy kit. Or the staff member would give you the kit to use with the student. And again, that would probably be site specific. So you could go ahead and open it up. You know those directions are there, read through them. What materials do I need? And then you can have fun and play. Again, these are meant to be engaging and fun. It's also practicing a lot of other things, especially for our littler ASPers, taking turns, patience, being a good sport if you lose. So know that these games practice a lot more than just literacy skills as well. Literacy kits are not yet at sites, the kind of newer rethought of, reimagined. So please stay tuned. Again, when they are live, the best person will be, the site staff who will let you know, hey, the new literacy kits are here. But they are not yet live. And again, sometimes it may be that a student's needs are different from a literacy kit. So just know that may not be always what you're doing with a student. It's just kind of one option that could be something you'll see. And again, that's kind of going into, I was a little ahead of myself. So some of our students may have needs outside of kind of these phonics-based games. We do, again, kind of a series of assessments. So we really are honing in exactly where our students need to grow in order to kind of boost their overall literacy. So you may be, an ASP staff may say, they are working in a journal or a workbook where they're going to read a passage and complete a related activity or questions. A site staff may say, I would love you to read the story aloud to the student or group of students, or a student may be reading a book to you. And my next slide, I'm going to tell you, I hear this a lot is, am I really helping? Is reading aloud to a student actually beneficial? Is that really helping them? So I wanted to, again, I love a quote. So I had a great volunteer earlier who volunteered to read. Do I have one more brave volunteer to read for us? Because my voice. Anyone?
I would love to read it.
Thank you.
Children become strong readers when they are exposed to language early and often. Study shows that reading aloud to children from a young age builds vocabulary and comprehension skills, which are critical for academic success. Even after they learn to read on their own, reading with parents or caregivers continues to support their literacy skills. Shared reading enables them to encounter new words and ideas they might not face on their own.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So really, in conclusion, yes. There is again just a wealth of academic research that shows really numerous benefits for students to listen to reading. I always tell, in my time as a teacher and in many parent-teacher conferences, I always reminded my families that students learn to read from the readers that read to them. What does a good reader look like? What does a good reader do when they face a word they don't know? How does a reader read with expression? How do I tell the story? How do I keep a reader engaged? So there is so much benefit, and I could spend the next hour talking about, to you reading to a child. I really want to hone that in, that it may feel like I'm not actually helping, but it is one of the most things. They study the impact of reading aloud to students' future academic success, like we talked about earlier. So please know that though it may not always feel like a good use of time, it is one of the best. And it's fun. One of my favorite things always to do was to read aloud to students. So please know it is very, very helpful. And it's helpful when they read to you too, of course. Okay, so learning to read is a very difficult thing that many of us forget what it was like. Unlike talking, reading is not something our brains are hardwired to do. So for some, it's incredibly difficult. So no one from AHC expects for you to become a literacy specialist. This is my jam. This is my job. These are my degrees. So please know that the point of this is not to make you feel overwhelmed that you don't know these things, but it's more to just give some context. How can I help a student if they are facing an unknown word? What does it sound like to be supportive? So some of this is just fun facts, giving you a little information, and then some tips. So there are 44 sounds in our language that are represented by letters or combination of letters. When a child is reading to you and they face a word in a text that they don't know, we really want to hone in on encouraging them to look carefully at the letters and say each sound or chunk of sounds, chunk of letters that make one sound. Once they have identified each sound, they can then blend those sounds together to identify the unknown word. For longer words, it is helpful for students to see them in smaller chunks, usually the syllables, to sound them out and put them back together. The main goal is to guide students to use their letter and sound knowledge first, and not to guess from pictures or context, because sometimes there will be no pictures and there will be no context. And those skills that they've used to kind of survive reading in the past will fail in those times. So we really want to have students relying on their own knowledge versus guessing or looking at the pictures. So here are some common ways, common phonics patterns that our young readers will see. Again, this is my thing. This is my passion. But I do think it's helpful for adults who are supporting students in reading to see some very common chunks of letters that will help them guide a student to see those chunks in words that they don't know. These are just some. There are a lot. But again, I think just getting in your mind, okay, when I'm helping a student read an unknown word, I need to look for letter or letters that may make one sound that I can help them kind of chunk that out together. So again, no one expects you to know all of this, and I just think it's helpful for you to start thinking about kind of internalizing. So this would be an example of two words that I have broken apart just to kind of give you an example of what it would look like if you were reading with a young reader and they were struggling with that word. What would it look like to help them sound it out, to kind of put those together? So brush only has one syllable and it has all single letters, and then it does have what we call a digraph at the end. So they would sound out those letters, b, sh, brush. And that is a one syllable word, so it's a little simpler. But I did also want, oh, sorry, that's my fault. I did want to also show you what it would look like in what we call a multisyllabic word. So this is a word that has more than one syllable. So the word is butterfly. So those chunks we were talking about, the syllables, would be butterfly. So they would sound out the first syllable, and the two T's are chunked together. And then then in the middle, we have a T, and then what we call an R controlled vowel. So the ER makes one sound. And then the final syllable, all of the letters make their own sound. So they would sound out those chunks, those syllables, and then put those sounds together to say the multisyllabic word. Sometimes students get very overwhelmed when they see a word such as butterfly and they don't immediately know it and they say, oh my gosh, it's too long, I can't sound it out. But if you kind of break it down, well, actually, let's break it down into three chunks. You can read these three small chunks and put them together to one word. So I thought this would be helpful to kind of see what it would look like in two different examples when you are coaching a student who is facing an unknown word. My final thoughts, I just really want to overstate. We're so incredibly thankful that you spend your time work. I know many are working or in school themselves or just your own lives. We are so thankful that you spend your time with us, supporting the academic goals of some of our smallest residents. Your time, effort, and companionship make a truly lasting difference in the lives of our residents. And we're just so thankful to have you on board with us supporting our residents as we work to impact success in many facets of their life. In this way, their literacy goals. Thank you. Of course, thank you. And I just wanted to stop. Are there any questions? I know I did see one in the chat, and it sounds like maybe there could be some desire to have maybe some posters up in sites, maybe just kind of some of those phonics things that could help a volunteer when they were supporting a student with an unknown word. And I think that's a great idea. That is certainly something that we can start kind of putting up in our sites. It would be helpful for our students too. So I think that certainly that is a great idea, and I love that suggestion. So thank you so much. Um, Anything else? Please feel free to unmute or again put it in the chat. But just thank you so much. I know it can be daunting.
I
I
have a
see a
question.
virtual hand. Please go. Oh, good. Either one.
It's not literacy exactly, but I would like advice. So when I am working with the children, and I'm an English speaker, I do understand Spanish though. And the children, it's particularly some of the younger ones who are comfortable with English, I know, but they'll speak Spanish to each other. And it's not to be mean to me or to the other children. Should we direct them? Is there a policy to say, or do you know what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, so I think, of course, AHC, we're very inclusive, knowing that, our spaces are a place where, we encourage multilingual learners. So I think for us, it's something that we do support and encourage. I know it can be a little frustrating if you don't understand the language as well. But I think that and if it's more of a distraction issue, I think that then you could kind of divert their attention back to the task at hand. But we really do. Many of our AHC spaces are bilingual spaces where we
Okay.
allow and kind of support students to speak. And many students will go back and forth, which is something
Mhm.
that's always so incredible to me that their brains can change languages that fast. So it's certainly something that we encourage and support. But if it's a behavior issue,
No, no,
distract.
no, no.
Yeah,
Perfect. I mean, that's what I've been doing. I just wanted to make
wonderful.
sure, especially when we're
Yes.
talking about literacy and phonetics in the English language, I wanted to make sure that I was on target with letting go with the to and
Yes.
back and forth.
Amazing. Thank you so much for checking. I appreciate that.
I had a question. Are there any resources like we can use on our own to practice on the phonics piece? Um, yeah, I was trying to do that with one of the students, and I was realizing like I know how to sound this out, but I'm like I don't know if I'm doing it exactly right, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, what that's a great question, and thank you for your commitment. I'm overwhelmed. I can absolutely do maybe like a one sheeter cheat sheet for any that would be interested. Again, um, there's so much to know, but if some would feel that some sort of like one sheeter steps that can be made available, I'd be happy to create that. And Millie and I can talk about how we share that out to volunteers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I also had a question. I know you mentioned that we're going to be getting a group of students to guide during our the time that we're volunteering there. So are we going to be getting the same group every week, or is it going to be different every week?
That is a good question. And I do, and yeah, go ahead, Millie.
Yeah, I can hop in. Thanks, Annabelle. So, it'll depend, right? So, not every session at your center is going to look the same, and certainly not every center will look the same as each other. So, if you work a lot better with a small group of students and the same students every time, you should communicate that to your center staff if that's not already happening, because there might be some flexibility in how your time with students is structured. But I don't have a super clear answer for you because it really just does depend. So I know sometimes the variety is something people look forward to, where it's like, who knows what volunteering is going to look like today, because students might have had a really long day or might have a lot of energy, and it will really just depend. If you remind me what center you're at, do you know, Annabelle?
Uh, I don't think I quite remember. I'm so sorry.
No, that is a-okay. I can follow up with you as well if you want to be connected to your center staff through me. But yeah, it'll depend. Is that an okay answer? I hope that's
Yeah,
not
thank you so much. That's great.
frustrating. Yeah, thank you for your flexibility in that. And I see Chris, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. Yes, I have a question. As one of the other volunteers mentioned initially that she understands Spanish and that some of her students will sort of like by nature go back into their native language to communicate with each other. 30 years ago, I taught bilingual kindergarten with Spanish for like 1 year. And one of the things that I did here's my question asking, is this appropriate to do in this situation? And if yes, maybe it could help other people. I haven't thought of it since then, but when they would revert to Spanish and the goal was to teach them English, we would do the words side by side, bird in English, bird in Spanish. So we're learning both. Is there any disadvantage in this scenario to do that? Because we can learn Spanish too. We can be like, how do you say apple? How do you say it in English? Like, how does that work? Has that ever been something that's been useful?
I think that that's amazing. Certainly, I think that I can't think of any, I can't think of any, disadvantage. Language immersion, is always really beneficial, and especially students who are learning. I always found, especially I had a lot of newcomers in my time newer to the United States. And I think it created a space of learning where if they felt like other students were learning their language while they learned English, it's kind of like everybody's learning together and making mistakes. So it kind of creates a safer space to kind of take risks with language. And I know that, we have a lot of bilingual staff. We're so lucky with students as well. So we'll do a lot of work in that facet. I think that that's very appropriate and very awesome. So thank you for that suggestion. I think that's great.
Thank you.
And Shannon, I actually have a question, which we didn't talk about this before, but it's a thought I had during this presentation because I spend some time in ASP classrooms as well. And I'm wondering how you confront this sort of like vibe that we get from students sometimes, that reading and books are a worse alternative than like something you could do on a screen. And I'm wondering how like you go about that when you're trying to work with a student and they would so much rather play like an educational game or something that is on a screen when you want to be reading aloud from a paper book instead.
It's a very valid question, especially coming from the classroom. We are competing with iPads and Roblox and all the things that you hear about that I truly know nothing about. To be honest with you, I typically we'll tell them, developmentally appropriately, of course. Some of the information that I shared with you, talking about how empowering it is to be good at reading and to feel confident and tell them about all the different ways that they do reading in their life. And I think the point is that my goal is not that all students love to read, because there are a lot of adults that don't love to read, right? But they're still successful at it. So I think that our goal can be, even if it's unwilling practice, of course we would like them to be super happy and excited all the time, but I do think that there's a level of we know that they've been in school all day doing all of this. And B, they don't have to love it, but if they are willing, to practice, I think that we can meet them where they are there. Because I mean, again, when we think about all that technology brings, of course, it may feel a little more exciting to be on that. And I think we can acknowledge that, but kind of reminding them that, reading, is it grows your brain. It allows you to, explore the world. It allows you to, and it depends on how old the student is, to maybe a kindergartner or first grader, you're growing your brain. I don't know that a fifth grader, you could, but they probably would be like, you're really dorky. So I think it depends on the age of the student. But I really do remind them that the work that they're doing, what do you want to be? I had a conversation with a student at ASP over the summer, who told me that they really want to be a singer. And I said, okay, so I had to connect reading to being a singer. And I said, okay, well, when you're reading a contract or you're writing lyrics and songs, you need these skills to be able to do that. So I think just helping them connect the dots on how these skills connect to really many of their aspirations tends to help give it a little more meaning. And again, they may still be like, ugh, whatever. And that is okay. I think that we can acknowledge that they may not love it, and that is okay, but we're here and we're going to practice. Is that good, Millie?
Yeah, that totally helps.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for asking. It's a good question. Any other questions? So it sounds like for me, some items moving forward, I'm certainly can, maybe collect some posters and things that can be hung up in our sites. Often in our classrooms, many teachers will have similar things in their classrooms that support students. I always found that my students were constantly looking at kind of some of these helpful things as they were still mastering those skills. So I think it's a great recommendation to have some of that up in our sites, and then just kind of a cheat sheet that can be pulled out for some folks who would like a brush up or just kind of that kind of written out kind of things with some helpful hints. I'd be happy to do that too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shannon. I think this is the first training you've led for volunteers on staff, so we're so glad you're here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for asking me. I could talk literacy all day, so don't get me started.
I mean, I will be in my follow-up for this, where I'm going to send everyone the recording and the slides. I will also be sharing Shannon's email address, so you can be asking any literacy follow-ups to her.
Yes, please.
But thank you all so much. We're going to dismiss from here. We're not going to go back to the big session. But again, you can always follow up with us. Thank you for being here. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday nights. Bye, y'all.